Welcome to the Amplify to Seven Figures podcast, where we look inside the mind of seven-figure entrepreneurs to see how they amplify their business and amplify their life. Let's welcome today's guest. Welcome to the Amplify to Seven Figures podcast. Today's guest is an amazing human being who I have actually had the pleasure of working with for the last few months. He and his wife, Chelsea, started as wedding videographers, traveling around the country, capturing people's special day. And then after, they wanted to find something that they could create passive income while they had a newborn baby. And then they ventured into the world of Amazon FBA. Within a year or two, they'd launched a six-figure plus brand. And then they decided they wanted to help other new parents who were going through the same struggles that they were going through. And they decided to help stay-at-home mums. Grown a community of over 10,000 rainmakers in the process. They've since grown their Rainmaker Academy to over seven figures using challenges and have helped thousands of mums start and scale their own six-figure side hustle during that time. Please give a warm welcome to 1/3 of the Rainmaker family, Stephen Diaz. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Hey, everybody. So excited to be here.
Love it, Stephen. And, you know, we can have a slightly different conversation than we've usually have, obviously, because I know the whole process that's going on as well. So first, we really want to talk about community because, and when I'm talking about community, I'm not on about the app community, even though I know you use that for texting. We're talking about how have you built a community of 10,000 people. You know, I've seen your community arrive at your house with surprise gifts and say, hey, we love you in Chelsea. We want to give you these gifts. How do you build such a strong community?
Man, yeah, community has always been such a core part of Chelsea and I's life. You know, I guess Chelsea was in high school. I was in college at the time. I think Chelsea pretended to be in college to get this job because you're supposed to be in college, but we worked as summer camp counselors at a summer camp together. And actually, I was the videographer. Chelsea was a counselor. But it was really there where we learned to just live in community and how life is just so much better when you have other people doing the same thing on the same mission. And ever since then, and that's also when we learned we could work together, not like kill each other, you know? So that's kind of where our photography and videography business was born out of that. But we always had that heart for how can we incorporate community into our lives? And community is one of those things you kind of have to fight for a little bit, you know, because people want to be isolated. They want to be divided sometimes. And so sometimes community takes a real dedicated effort and kind of pushing. But the cool thing is the culture of community, once you cultivate it, right, it kind of grows itself. And so that's what we've done with Rainmakers is inside of our Facebook group, we kind of incentivize community a little bit at the beginning. You got to push it a little bit, right? But as it starts to grow, it becomes the culture in that group. We're running this whole thing in a Facebook group, and it just becomes like the natural way people act in that group, which is really cool. So at the beginning, you know, it definitely looked like pulling teeth a little bit. Like, you know, when we first did our first challenge, I think we had 200 people in the group, and I was messaging people personally, you know, like I always, I kind of go back to the 911 analogy. I guess over there, it's not 911, huh?
Well, we got 999.
Okay, 999. We
like to wear out that 9 button, yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, the analogy is like if there's an emergency and you say, call 911 to a crowd of people, no one will call 911. You have to tell one person, hey, you, John, call 911, right? And same thing with getting testimonials or getting community built. Sometimes it takes reaching out to one person just to kind of kickstart it, right? So I would actually reach out like individually to people and say, hey, you know, in our group, one of the first things we ask people to do is go live in the group. I know it's a little scary, but so is building a business. So this is their first chance to break fear off your life and step into boldness. Can you go live in the group? Just 30 seconds, introduce yourself, right? And so I'd ask one person that, they'd be like, oh yeah, sure, Stephen, I'll do it. And, you know, we had some friends in the group when we first started. So we start with those people. And once that started happening and other people see other people going live in the group, it just snowballs. And that's definitely a strategy we use a lot in our group is not allowing people to really hide behind their keyboards. We tell them to go live. We tell them, hey, you don't have to be polished. You don't have to have makeup on. You can be in your pajamas, but grab your phone and go live. And it's definitely kind of our culture in the group that people just grab their phones and they talk to their phones. And it feels weird at first for someone who's never done it, but it really connects people because you get to see their face, you get to see their lives, you get to see their kids, and it really builds community very fast. The second thing we've done in that group is like I said, we incentivize community. So we really kind of put it a part of the challenge. Like when they join our group, it's a challenge. We tell them, hey, this is a challenge. We're going to give you homework. So part of the challenge we say is don't be a silent observer. If you watch a video on Facebook that someone else took their phone out, took a risk, went live, and don't watch that video and not comment on it. Like, don't be a silent observer. Always leave a comment. Always let them know you're there for them, supporting them. So when you go live, the same thing happens. And so we had to like kind of push it and repeat it a little bit at the beginning, but now it's at the point where it just has kind of taken a life of its own. And we have people inside of that challenge group, which is more like our marketing group. And then it brings people into our back end mastermind. But we have people who are not paid in the challenge group every single day helping people because that's just the culture in the group and they love doing it.
Yeah, I love all that. Definitely amazing to have those Facebook groups. And something that we found when we had a group of brides to be, obviously coming from the wedding industry as well, when we found a turning point at 350 members where it went from us posting everything to members started to take control. Did you find a tipping point where you were like, do you know what, at this point now people are starting to do that stuff themselves as opposed to you having to push everything along?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's kind of that same point of like, you do have to push at the beginning. You got to create the culture. You got to hustle a little bit, but there is this tipping point where it just takes a life of its own and the community fuels itself. And it makes the whole thing less work for you, which is so cool. I'm all about passive income, but I'm also like, let's do passive social media. Let's do passive customer support, right? Like without it being bad, but like, how can you ingrain these things into your business so that people in your community, people in your business have a heart to serve and help other people without, being even on staff.
Yeah. Let's explore that a little bit around the passive income. And when we say passive income, I don't think it's just the income part of it, right? Like what I've learned working with you is you are very passive in the way that you let people do their thing, right? You don't micromanage stuff. Were you always that way? Like, and you're a very humble and calm kind of guy. Have you always been that way, or is that a learned skill?
Yeah, I think it's definitely part of my wiring to be a little bit more on the chill side, a little more passive, as far as, I try to not be as reactionary to things and really take a step back, breathe a little bit, and use wisdom when responding to things when they come up. So I think it's a mix of, it is more my personality, but also, it is a learned skill because sometimes I think we can get in the way of ourselves, like when you just jump to like a reactionary response, you get an email and, someone's just, laying out all the things wrong with the program or whatever, they're just on a rant, that first email you want to write is never a good email, so I let it sit. I breathe a little bit. I usually give it a night, and then one thing that's really helped us in this last season is this concept of, coming against something in opposite greater spirit. It sounds a little woo woo, but like, all the darkness in the world couldn't overcome one candle, like there's always like opposite, but greater, things that can just overpower, right? So like positivity always overcomes negativity. Love always overcomes hate. And so I always think about like, if someone's sending an email, I always kind of like look beyond the stuff of the email. Let's say this is just a specific example. And I kind of say, what's the spirit behind this email, And if I can kind of, like, let's say the email has a lot of lack language in it. It's like, I can't do this. I don't have enough time. It's all these things. Then I kind of ask myself, how could I come against that in this opposite greater spirit that's going to diffuse that, but also help the person choose something better, And so that's been a skill that I've definitely developed over time. And sometimes the responses, don't look like your normal responses, like you don't read this in a business book or something. Yeah. But, if someone's coming with hate and then you come with love, it's crazy. People are like, who is this person? Like, and it changes people's lives. So that's been one thing, just being, anyone listening to this show, if you feel like you are called to lead a community of people, that's such a valuable skill you can learn as a leader, to not just be reactionary, but be a powerful person and, lead with positivity, love, and all these things that really will overcome any negativity or any, hate or anything that's trying to come against you.
I love that. And, when it comes to that kind of message, sometimes that gets portrayed in the wrong way, right? People, like you say, it sounds almost a bit hippie-ish. Just give them love, man. But it's like, it's true. It's so true, because the question that a lot of people ask is, what would that person need to believe in order to say that thing or to do that thing? And yeah, it goes across the board. I'm sure you probably agree with that.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, I remember we, sometimes we get like, any type of, program, any type of investing in yourself, right? There is sometimes a period of fear or a period of, we call it buyer's remorse or something. And so you could just tell when someone joins a program, a week or two later, we get a string of emails, and, oh no, this thing in my life is happening, or this external, a lot of times it's external, right? Yeah. Oh, my mom just did this, and, I have to, it's all these things like outside of the person themselves. And I love in that moment sharing a story of my own, because in 2018, I invested in myself, joined a mastermind type program, invested a lot of money, and I sent the same email like 3 weeks later. And so I literally send these people a screenshot and I say, you know what? I totally get where you're at. I see what you're feeling. But let me share a story with you. And I just share the story of how I emailed one of my coaches the same thing, like all this lack, all this, like, oh, this stuff is happening. And this guy challenged me, and he sent me an audio message actually. He said, you know what? What we do works. We know that it works. You can see all the testimonials here. So even if you're not passionate about it, just do the work for a short amount of time, get a return on your investment, and then move on to something else you're more passionate about. And it really challenged me. And I actually did stay in that program. I actually did do the work. And, it did catapult us to the next level. And so I share that story with people because it relates down to like, where they're at right there, but also inspires them that like, for me to truly love them doesn't look like me letting them off the hook and making these excuses. It actually looks like me challenging them and saying, you know what, I see something better for you. Why don't you like stick with us, lean into this thing. Let's figure this out together, And that has really helped a lot of people stay with us and actually do get the results, because I don't know, when you're trying to step into a new opportunity, you're trying to do something big, there's some pushback sometimes. There's some weird stuff that comes up that wants to hold you back from that breakthrough, and having a coach, having a mentor who can just push you through that is so valuable.
Yeah, anyone listening to this needs to really, as much as you can take that on board. That as well, we don't have to fight against the other person. We just give them the love, and then at the same time show them, hey, pretty much everyone who's gone through this program has been through that position as well. So I love that, Stephen. That's really, really valuable stuff. Moving forward, I want to talk a little bit about you've got to 7 figures alongside balancing this work and home life, and having your amazing little man Kai as well, who wanted to be on the podcast just before we started as well, running in. So how do you balance? Well, firstly, how do you balance that work life? Because like I see you working a lot, right? And at the same time, how do you balance that from a relationship level with Chelsea? Because you're always together. Yeah. Do you fall out? Or
yeah, no, that's a great question. And man, I think entrepreneurship, running a business with your spouse, is like the greatest marriage counseling, because it really forces you to learn to communicate, to learn to manage roles, And so Chelsea and I, like, thankfully have had a lot of experience with this because we did run this photography and videography business for years. Like, it's been, I think, 8 years of running that business. And, we started that business a year before we got married. So we don't really know anything different. We always had a business together. But there were ups and downs, and we learned, I would say the most probably about communication. And so as far as balance goes, though, I would say, I don't know. I kind of have a different opinion on balance. And, I feel like, and maybe I heard this from Myron Golden or something like that. He was talking about, it's not about balance, it's about seasons, and, sometimes in business, it's seasonal, right? There may be a hustle season and there may be a rest season, and for us, Chelsea and I kind of know that sometimes we're in a hustle season where it's like, all right, we're going to push a little bit. We got a launch coming up, I'm going to work a couple extra hours, but then after this thing, we're going to move into a rest season. We're going to go on a trip. We're going to, and so we kind of have more like seasonal, summers and winters, as opposed to always trying to balance everything at once. Now in that, even in a hustle season, we do still have boundaries and things that protect our family. Like, we're going to do dinner. We're going to, have no phones at the dinner table, like, kind of stuff like that. But it's just good to communicate what type of season you're in, and also cast a future for a rest season, especially if you're in a hustle season, especially if your spouse is not in the business with you. That'd be a super key thing to communicate. It's like, hey babe, I'm going to hustle from now till June. We're going to launch. And then after that, a month after, we're going to go on this big trip. We're going to like have a big old, have this like end in sight. So that it doesn't feel like you're just hustling the rest of your life. So yeah, I would say, instead of balance, focus on seasons, and then just really communicate those seasons with each other so that you can protect that connection and stay connected throughout it. And the best part, and Paul, you probably agree with this, about being an entrepreneur, is you can really pick up and take off. Like, I think sometimes we like put all this stuff on ourselves and it feels like, oh, I got to show up to work today, but at the end of the day, really, like, I could cancel all my meetings today if I really wanted to, and it wouldn't be the end of the world. And so sometimes you set yourself up as your own boss, but then you forget your own boss. And you let the calendar kind of manage you. But me and Chelsea do this all the time. Like, we're going to do it right after this show. Like, we're going to go get coffee. It's actually, we have a nanny who's just amazing. She's actually helped us in our business, and today's her last day. So we're just taking the day to just like, we're going to get balloons and get coffee and order lunch and just, have a good time with her and just celebrate her graduating, working with us. And she actually launched her own, like, you hang around us too long and she's launching her own business. And like, we're like, okay, yeah, we can't keep people here too long because they hear me talking all day and they're like, all right, I'm going to go change the world, launch a business. And so that's what she's doing.
Do you think I don't know if you find that a lot. I found that even with our team, like sometimes you don't even know what the people are working on. And it's like, oh yeah, I've got my own t-shirt business. I'm like, have you? And I saw Akbar Sheikh as well. He said he had a VA. And she was like, oh, can you send me an award as well? I've done $100,000. And he was like,
yeah,
what? So do you find that happens a lot because of the whole, you become the 5 people you surround yourself with?
Yeah. No, it's very true. It's almost, entrepreneurship is almost contagious, and, for you listening to the show, like, you're doing a great thing just by soaking in it. The more you hang around people, and Paul has just multiple 7-figure people on this show, the more you just like hang around that, the bigger your mindset gets. We were just at 2 conferences over the last couple of weeks, and man, I just like, every time I'm in that type of atmosphere, I'm just like, man, there's another level. There's other levels that, like, I think if you're just sitting in your Zoom room all quarantined, like, if you're not talking to people, you're not growing. And just being around other entrepreneurs who think a totally different way than you, it'll stretch you to be like, wow, there's bigger opportunities. There's more for me to do. And yeah, it's so powerful.
I love it all. And now, one of the big things when we first started working together, you were like, hey, Paul, I want to make this challenge. We've been doing live challenges. We've done like, what was it, 4 of them, I think, by then? 3 or 4?
Yeah, we had done 4.
So you've done 4 at that point, and you were like, we want to make it evergreen. Firstly, what made you want to make that shift to evergreen, and how's it been since? What's it been like?
Yeah. Yeah, the challenge marketing model, man, it's been like a game changer for our business. And so we're on I think we've done 6 challenges now. But at the time, yeah, we had done 4, or maybe it was 5, but live challenges, which are a lot of work, right? A lot of work, a lot of energy, a lot of effort, which is awesome. But, I always think about when there's a new-ish marketing method, I always look at other marketing methods, right? And so when you kind of look in the past of internet marketing, we see webinars. Webinars were like that thing. Webinars still do great, but like, when you look at, okay, like I think I got this from Jason Fladlien. Jason Fladlien, genius guy. And I sat at one of his like round tables at ClickFunnels. There's like 50 people trying to sit around this table and trying to like listen, throw their phone on the table and record. But he said one thing that was like, oh, wow. He's like, if funnels are the thing, like what you got to think, what's the next thing? Like what do funnels lead to? So he was always looking at the future of like, where does this go? If everyone's going to be into funnels over the next year or whatever, where are these people going next? And how can you be there? And so I kind of think that way with challenges because like with webinars, you saw with webinars, it was like live webinar. And then what was next? Evergreen webinar. So everyone tried to figure out how can we make this thing evergreen. So I was like, how can we do that with challenges? I hadn't seen anyone do it with challenges. I came to Paul. I was like, I don't even know how we could do this. Paul had some awesome ideas. But the idea is, it helps in so many ways. One, you're running ads, challenges are super difficult to run ads to because you got a start date and an end date, and you have like 2 weeks to blast as much money on ads as you can, leading up to a challenge. If you advertise a challenge too far out, like it just doesn't convert. So you have like a really short window. So that makes it really tricky. So when you go evergreen, now you can run ads all the time. You can get way more data. You can do way more split testing. Also the evergreen, it can just be passive, right? I'm the passive income guy. And so, it's so cool to know there's hundreds of people going through our challenge right now on autopilot in the background, and they're still getting a high level of engagement and service. And that's some of the stuff. We could geek out on that, but Paul's really helped us think through like that customer journey and how we could stay connected with them, because that was my fear going evergreen was like, oh, I don't want to lose that like personal touch with me and Chelsea or the feeling of the community. And so we've done some really fun things to just over deliver in that area, so people still feel like we're holding their hand throughout the journey.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, about feeling that personal connection. And I think that's why a lot of people have held off with the evergreen, because they've related it to evergreen webinars and thought that, well, evergreen webinars, people pretend and try and pretend it's live and it's not, and people have seen through it. We're like, yeah. I think the difference is maybe with your evergreen is we haven't pretended that it's live. We've just created this experience where it feels more live. So that's great. I'd also like to touch as well on when we were in the live challenge, talk about like how it got a little bit chaotic during the actual launch part. So we everything that could go wrong went wrong. So I want people to know that these are not always like, so are you okay sharing the kind of numbers that we did on that as well?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so we did. We've done about $1 million on that launch, on that last live challenge, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't plain sailing. What were a couple of the things that didn't go so well?
Yeah, this is such a good conversation because any entrepreneur knows this, and if you don't know this, you're gonna know it, right? That there are gonna be walls that come up, like again, that try and hold you back from your breakthrough. And for some reason, this particular challenge, man, there was more walls than ever. It was like the website went down in the middle of the night. I'd be like about to go to sleep, and then we had this little bot that would let us know if the website went down. It's like, website went down. And I'm like, okay, luckily Paul's awake. And so me and him would hop on Zoom and rebuild the entire website in 30 minutes,
We run at 1 o'clock in the morning, I think, your time.
And it was just like at least twice throughout the process. And, but man, we really honed that thing in. But yeah, there was Facebook ad account was going down. My payments there was like a weird glitch that week on Facebook. Payments weren't going through, even though there's adequate money on the card. they wouldn't go through. And when your payment doesn't go through to Facebook, they shut down every ad you have. So I was like constantly checking that. So it was an odd thing. And we also had recently had a price increase on our program as well. And so, there was a little bit of pushback in the community on that, as far as, people who had been with us for years and we're like, I'm saving up for this amount for the next challenge, because we do these challenges pretty consistently every 4 months or so, at least in the past. And so people were like, I'm ready to join at this price. And then we're like, well, actually we added a bunch of stuff to it, so now it's here. And so that was a transition as well. So there's a lot of stuff, but yeah, it was still a 7-figure challenge. I mean, not many people are running 7-figure challenges, and we've done 4 of them so far.
And I think the thing that was the toughest is we knew the numbers were there, right? We knew that if we put this amount of dollars in, this amount of dollars was coming out, and we knew it was going to be a great return. And we couldn't spend quick enough because they had. And so I think to rectify that, I think I just said set up 10 ad accounts.
Yeah, that's right.
And so now we've got 10 backup accounts just in case. So that's one of the things they have, at that 7-figure level, you've always got to be thinking, well, what could go wrong? And if something does go wrong, over engineer the fact of making sure it can't go wrong more than once.
Yeah. I think the thing I've really appreciated with you, Paul, you just know the numbers so well. And so it really, at this level, it's a math game. It really is a math game. And we knew if we got X amount of people in the challenge, we're gonna have $1 million challenge. And so that was all it was about. It was like, okay, how can we get this many people in the challenge? And I remember it was probably 4 or 5 days out from the challenge, and we still wanted to spend probably $100,000 more on Facebook, And we kind of had this conversation with our ad team, and just like, all right, how's this going to happen? And they really pulled it through, and we ran ads even a few days into the challenge, which was really helpful too, because there's some people who come in late and they still can catch up. And we finally hit that number I was trying to get in the challenge, because I knew if we get that number, 10% most likely would turn into back end members with us, and we would hit those numbers. And it's because we built this business the way we have. Like, we have coaches on our team, and they're all like family. Like, these people who have come through our community, and we're supporting like families all over the world with our business. So like, I felt responsible to them. Like, I'm like, I need to get like X amount of people in our group so that they can have business. Like, I'm like, I need students for them to coach, because like, people are quitting their jobs, like, to go full time with our, with rainmakers and help us grow this thing. And I'm like, man, you feel the weight sometimes of that. And like, man, we need this thing to work. So it totally did. But yeah, there were some scary moments. You got to have faith, you got to have faith that it's going to be good, and that there's a proven, system. We've done this over and over. We just gotta make it happen. Yeah.
And it's so important, like you say, to know the numbers, and to be, because you've gone through that scaling process before, you knew you had the option to go and spend as much money as possible, because you had faith and you got cash flow. And the difference between, and you tell me your thoughts on this, but I see the difference between the 6 and 7-figure entrepreneur is a 6-figure entrepreneur is almost working launch to launch. They're almost, okay, cool, we've made that money and now we're starting from scratch. It's because you had those cash reserves, you can kind of go, just spend as much as you can. I remember even saying, just spend as much as you can. Like, maybe even to your own detriment, even the first 4 weeks of the Evergreen, you were like, did we make any money? And I'm like, man, is this guy great? Are you just trusting in the process?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a learned skill for sure. So if anyone's listening to this and you're like, how do you like our first challenge, you guys, like, just to bring it back to home base, right? Like, we spent $2,000 on ads for our first challenge. And that, at the time, as a wedding business, and just like, we're not sure, the challenge wasn't proven at that point, right? It was our first experiment with this challenge model we'd been hearing about. $2,000 felt really scary. $2,000, we're like, wow, like, it feels like gambling, throwing money on Facebook, $2,000. Yep. But we had about 200 people, like I said, come into that challenge. And at the time I was doing all the coaching myself. We didn't have a team, and we had 30 people join the back end program. And it produced $60,000. So $2,000 spent on Facebook, $60,000 on the back end. So then you build some confidence up. You're like, all right, the next time let's spend more. Let's do 10,000, which at the time, again, felt terrifying. It was like, wow, $10,000 on ads. This is crazy. Right. So you, in entrepreneurship like this, you build up, like kind of authority and confidence as you go. So we spent 10 on that challenge. We made 100,000 on the back end, raised the price a little bit, worked with a few more, like 30 students instead of 20. And it was a 3K program. And then I did a special thing to cause I hit 90K, and I was like, I did a special thing just to get it over 100. Cause I was like, man, 100K in a month. Like that was like, we worked for years in the wedding business to make over 6 figures, like 3 years probably in before we made 6 figures. And now we made it in a month. I was like, this is crazy. And so we just kind of worked our way up from there. The next challenge, I was planning to spend 20,000 on ads, like just working our way up. And on that one, that's really where our funnel became self-liquidating, which means it was paying for itself. It was paying for itself. And not only that, it was 2xing our money. So like every dollar I was putting into Facebook, it was multiplying by 2. Like I would put $1 in, I'd get 2 out on the front end. Usually you don't make money in these challenges till the back end, So I remember I was actually with Pedro, who's like the challenge guy, and we were out in Nashville creating his challenge course. And I called Chelsea and I was like, every dollar we're putting in Facebook is producing $2. Like we were planning on 20K, but how much money can I spend on Facebook? Like she's like, as much as, this credit card will hold, basically. So we ended up spending $65,000 on Facebook ads, which produced 120K on the front end. And that was our first $1 million challenge on the back end. So you build your confidence up here, as you go. So don't feel like you got to go spend $5,000 a day on Facebook ads. Start small, get some proven results, and then build your confidence up and scale from there.
And the fact that, even now you find when you do get to that scale point that you're not getting quite as big as the ROI on the ads, because you're reaching a wider, broader audience. And plus when iOS 14 updates come out and things as well, causes a few more issues. But do you find that your confidence level is that high now with ads? Is just going to spend whatever you need to spend? Well, as long as I've got someone watching that, and is it the fact that you've got someone on your team now watching those numbers and knowing that everything's going to be all right, that you just do what you need to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's been super helpful. I mean, I ran all my own ads up until the challenge we worked with you on. And that was a big release of control, because I was like, are you sure? Because in the past, I actually did hire another ad agency at the very beginning of this business, and they ended up getting us banned off Facebook. They didn't know how to be compliant, and it caused a lot of headache. And so I was very protective of that ad account. I was like, I need to do it myself. And I think a lot of times, like you said, like 6-figure entrepreneurs, they fall into that DIY mindset. Like I got to do everything myself, and you do for a little bit, but releasing that brought a lot of peace, and just hiring someone who had proven results, who knew our audience, who was working with the similar like kind of customer avatar, that really helped. But there were those times, like I said, like a week out from the challenge, I was like, oh shoot, I hope I hired the right person. But she totally showed up and nailed it. And now it's so nice to be hands off and also have you, Paul, to kind of know our numbers and watch them. Because, if it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't know, oh wow, like we're spending way too much money on YouTube when we should spend it more on Facebook. Like I always tell people now, like, it's good to have a nerd on your team, like someone who like, they got the, like, and I'm definitely like the nerd too. In Chelsea and I's relationship, I love geeking out on the numbers. I love, a good spreadsheet from time to time, but you need that person who is fired up around the numbers, likes to look at the stats, likes to split test. You need that person on your team, because if you don't know your numbers, then you could be burning money without knowing it.
Yeah, really important stuff there. And do you think that's going to be one of the secrets to 8 figures? Because that's obviously our goal together this year is to get you to doing 8 figures. And what I've seen speaking to other 7-figure entrepreneurs as well, and the ones who've got to 8, is it's all about the KPIs. So do you think? And that actually leads into my next question: where do you think the next 5 years of marketing is heading? But also, where do you think it's heading for rainmakers?
Yeah. I mean, knowing your numbers is such a freeing thing when like, man, every click I get to my website is going to produce this much money. our average order value I think ours is like 165, 170 on a $27, $37 product, right? Like the average order value. When you start knowing those numbers, it gives you a lot of creativity. I remember reading Russell Brunson's Traffic Secrets book, right? And he talks about once you know that number, you can have a lot of fun playing around where you can spend that number, right?
Yeah.
If we know we can spend up to $100+ to get a customer, like where can we spend $100? There's so many places, and it opens up like all these fun advertising and JV opportunities that are beyond Facebook. I mean, if we pay $100 on Facebook, like what if we paid, $50 in this other creative way, and it's really fun when you know those numbers because you can play with it. You can just be like, all right, now it's a playground. We have a system that works. Now let's just figure out how to get more people into that system in creative ways.
That's really, really important. And, some of the things that we've been talking about is like those JV kind of things where the option to go and say, hey, you can have all the money from the front end because we know within 30 days, people are going to make that money afterwards as well. So there's a lot of good stuff going on there. So Stephen, there's a really important question I want to ask you. And that is, what do you want to be remembered for when you die?
Wow. Yeah, man, I would say one of the things that fires me up the most is seeing people have financial breakthrough, and especially people who maybe have never had that in their family line, and they are the catalyst. They are the person who shifts that entire thing for generations. All it takes is one person in your family, you, to shift your finances forever. Like the things we've stepped into even, going from 0 to multiple 7 figures in our business, it's changed our baby's life before he even is old enough to know about it, Like he'll never worry about money. Like that's crazy. And his kids will probably never worry about money, and like, of course we're going to train him on money things and he's not going to be spoiled and privileged. But like, man, the power of just freeing people up is something I want to be known for. I want people, when they get around me, like their lives financially are never the same. But a reason I love finances too is because they bring out the heart, and I think something me and Chelsea talk about a lot is, when you talk about money, it really reveals people's hearts. And when you lean into entrepreneurship, when you lean into building on your own business, who you become in the process of doing that mentally and just spiritually and emotionally, like those things are so valuable as well. So we love kind of entrepreneurship as a front, so to say, to actually talk about the deeper things in people as well. So, you'll find this even in our challenge, like people join, hey, make passive income on Amazon. And then day 1 of the challenge, I'm talking about suicide. Day 6 of the challenge, I'm talking about racism. Like they don't sign up for that. That stuff doesn't sell on the front end.
No.
But when we're talking about like, if you want to build a foundation for this business, here's the stuff we need to talk about, and it sounds totally backwards, I promise. But it really does work into this conversation, and it takes people deeper, which anchors it in their heart and actually allows them to get that result. Because when walls come up, they have a deeper why. They've really owned that they're going to step into this opportunity to become an entrepreneur. And they're able to power through those walls. So, yeah.
And that's a great way to, really look at life in general, and having that why all the way through. It's gonna guide you, and I'm really excited to see the next step of the journey for Rainmakers and for you, Chelsea and Kai. So it's going to be phenomenal. What do you think, Stephen, is one quick win that people can use to amplify their business today?
Ooh, one quick win. Let's see. I mean, if you haven't tried a challenge, I would try a challenge. I mean, that for us was one of the catalysts. It was that plus really narrowing down our audience. So, okay, we're going to give you a 2-part quick win because you might have to do one of these 2 things. Narrowing down our audience was super key because it allowed us to really serve a very specific type of person at a really high level. When you do that, it makes all your marketing easier. It makes your language, your copywriting easier because you're writing for that one specific person. So that was key for us. And then doing a challenge really took it to the next level because challenges, you're able to deliver crazy value in advance for people, build a ton of trust, build a lot of community, And the best part about challenge is it's a filter. It's a filter. It's like an application to work with you. And so people who get through the challenge, they're dream clients. The people who get through the challenge, like they are the people you want to work with. And sometimes like on a VSL or webinar, like those again are great, but sometimes they can bring in not the best of clients because it's just like you only have so much time with them. With a challenge, like all the bad like fruit, so to say, like it kind of like it goes away in the first couple days. You know, like I always tell people, do something a little polarizing in the first few days, weed out those people you're not a good fit for, you know, and by the end of the challenge, everyone's like who's still with you, they're bought in, they're ready to continue on because you've delivered massive value at a fraction of the price, you know, for them during that week.
Awesome advice there. So the key things is niche down to one particular avatar, and then secondly, go and run a challenge because it's going to filter out the best possible people for you to work with going forward, which is fantastic. Stephen, where can people find out more about you and the Rainmaker Challenge?
Oh man, yeah, we just launched a podcast. You could check that out, the Rainmaker Family Show. And if you want to go through our challenge, just see how all the masterpiece that Paul has helped us build on the evergreen side of things, I'd encourage just going through it just to see the magic happen. That's the rainmakerchallenge.com.
Fantastic. So go to the rainmakerchallenge.com. You've been listening to the Amplify to Seven Figures podcast with me, Paul Ace, and my amazing guest, Stephen Diaz. Remember, amplify your business and amplify your life. Thanks for listening to the Amplify to Seven Figures podcast. To access the show notes, episodes, and this month's giveaway, head over to www.amplifyto7figures.com. Remember, amplify your business, amplify your life.